Hi guys, Olive here. Here today to show you all the nonfiction books that I've picked up recently. I do have quite a few. By my count, I have 27 to show you, which is my lucky number, which is a little bit excessive, but also it was just Christmas. I did get some books as gifts. I did gift myself a few books off of my wish list with some gift cards that I got. And I think there's every likelihood that I'm actually going to read quite a few of these in the very near future. So the guilt is lessened a little bit. Since there are so many books to talk about, let's just go straight into it. The first book I would like to show you was actually a recommendation from one of you. When I was going on and on about how much I loved 84 Charing Cross Road, one of you in my comment section recommended to me Tolstoy and the Purple Chair, My Magical Year of Reading by Nina Sankovic. This is the memoir of a woman who turned to reading as part of her grieving process after she lost her sister. I love memoirs, and I love books about books, so I'm pretty sure this recommendation is going to be spot on. Keeping on that books about books theme, I also picked up This Book is Overdue, How Librarians and Cyber Librarians Can Save Us All by Marilyn Johnson. I read another book of hers last year, which was all about archaeologists. I may not have loved that book, but I was still definitely interested in picking up this one of hers, which is all about librarians, the services that they provide, and their importance in the digital age. I love librarians. I actually now have the privilege of knowing quite a few librarians now that I am on Booktube, and I think they are awesome. I also couldn't help but pick up A Backward Glance by Edith Wharton because I am downright obsessed with Edith Wharton. I am reading The Custom of the Country right now, and I am loving it. I know I'm going to want to read all of the novels that she's ever written. She was extremely prolific, but I have to admit, I never knew she wrote an autobiography. I'm definitely going to have to pick this one up alongside one of her novels in the future. Another book I picked up about a famous author is called Jane on the Brain, Exploring the Science of Social Intelligence with Jane Austen by Wendy Jones. This book looks at aspects of Jane Austen's works to try to figure out what it is about some of her characters, psychologically speaking, that makes them so interesting and relatable. Considering I'm starting a series on this channel all about literary heroines and their psychology, I'll be very interested to hear her takes. But then I also picked up a book about lesser-known women writers called Forgotten Women, the Writers by Xin Tseng. This is a collection of short historical essays about women writers across time and across the world whose names have been largely lost to us today. When I was paging through this, I did see that Margaret Cavendish makes an appearance, and also Murasaki Shikibu, who wrote The Tale of Genji, which is on my Classics TBR this year, in case you missed that. I'm actually going to be very interested to go through this, not just because it's an interesting thing to read, but also to maybe get some ideas for future years' Classics TBRs, since I do like to strike a good balance between more well-known classics and lesser-known classics. A woman I've been really wanting to read more about is Ada Lovelace, and so I picked up her biography called Ada's Algorithm by James Essinger. Ada Lovelace was the daughter of Lord Byron, and she's considered one of the first, if not the first, computer programmer long before the digital age. Now you can see why I want to read more about her. I'm really hoping to read this sooner rather than later. I picked this next one up at the Brattle Bookshop in Boston. That book is called Secrets We Kept, Three Women of Trinidad by Crystal A. Sital. This book is the author's family story. Her family relocated from Trinidad to New Jersey, and when her grandfather, who she idolized for many years, slips into a coma, dark secrets about him begin to come to light. This next book I picked up off of a recommendation from the lovely Kazen over at Always Doing. She talked about A Simple Story, The Last Malambo in her nonfiction on Booktube tag. She called this book one of her favorite nonfiction books, and I've learned by this point to take her recommendations extremely seriously. This is a little wisp of a book that is all about an extremely rigorous dance called the Malambo that is performed in a remote Argentinian village. The young men of this village are extremely serious about this dance. They will sacrifice pretty much whatever they need to in order to be crowned the best at the yearly festival celebrating this dance. But the thing is, if they win, they can never compete again. This is a translated work of nonfiction. It has Kazen's stamp of approval, and it sounds absolutely fascinating. I really want to pick this one up. I saw this next one when I was browsing at my local used bookstore, and I could not pass it up. That book is called Retromania, Pop Culture's Addiction to Its Own Past by Simon Reynolds. This book looks at why exactly we return to old trends and ponders what will happen when we run out of past to return to. Considering I just bought my niece's fanny packs for Christmas, I'd say this is still relevant. From pop culture to pop music, I also picked up Electric Shock, From the Gramophone to the iPhone, 125 Years of Pop Music by Peter Dodgett. This is a comprehensive history of pop music, beginning with ragtime in the 1890s all the way up to the modern day, or at least until 2015 when this book was published. I do love me some pop music, so I am hyped about this one. And speaking of music, I also picked up an extremely chunky book called A History of Opera. This is A History of Opera. The title really says it all. I admit to not knowing a ton about opera, but I would really like to change that. Hence, this book. Another book I picked up off of the recommendation of the wonderful Kaz It Always Doing, who is responsible for so many of my book purchases, is Vanishing Fleece, Adventures in American Wool by Clara Parks. This book follows the wool production process. The author travels across the country, witnessing each step that the material goes through before it hits our shelves. On to other fluffy things, I also picked up The Cloud Spotter's Guide, The Science, History, and Culture of Clouds by Gavin Preter-Pinney. The subtitle does nearly all of the work for me when it comes to summarizing what this book is about. It is all about clouds, just about every aspect of clouds. It sometimes feels like Pittsburgh is the cloudiest place on Earth, so I figure I might as well understand the science. A book I picked up for myself off of my wish list is called Timefulness, How Thinking Like a Geologist Can Save the World by Marcia Bjoinerud. This book is all about what the geology of the Earth can teach us about its past, and then hopefully what that information can teach us about the Earth's future. Another science book I picked up is called The Planets by Dava Sobel. This is an overview of the planets in our solar system, but told through the lens of popular culture. So astrology, mythology, art, history, music, and more. Now on to some books about birds, since this is in fact one of my nonfiction hauls. This first one I just barely got during the book outlet Black Friday sale. There was so much traffic on the site that it kept crashing, but I persevered because there was only one copy of this book, which is called The Hidden Lives of Owls by Lee Calvez. This was one that was on my wish list, and so I absolutely wanted to get my hands on it. It is, unsurprisingly, all about owls. I also picked up The Bluebird Effect, Uncommon Bonds with Common Birds by Julie Zickfuss. If you did not know this, Julie Zickfuss's newest book, called Saving Jemima, was one of my favorite nonfiction books in 2019. I loved it so much. I wrote a very gushy review about it for Open Letters Review, and somehow Julie found that review, and not only did she email into Open Letters to thank me for it, but she also posted it on her Facebook, and she has some of the nicest followers ever. Everyone was so nice about my review. So I already wanted to read more of her backlist because I loved Saving Jemima so much, but that was one of the coolest experiences that has ever happened to me as a reviewer. So I made sure to pick up a backlist book of hers immediately. This book contains more of her experiences being a bird rehabilitator, and from the looks of it, it contains a lot more of her gorgeous artwork. I am so excited about this. The last bird book I have to show you is actually one that Steve very generously sent me. As always, thank you so much, Steve. That book is called My Penguin Year, Life Among the Emperors by Lindsay McRae. The author of this book is a cameraman, and this is his story of how he spent 337 days following 11,000 emperor penguins around Antarctica. But I do have a couple more books about animals. The first of those is called The Moon by Whale Light by Diane Ackerman. I said this in my latest 5-star nonfiction predictions video, but I really do feel that Diane Ackerman is going to be a new favorite author of mine. I just haven't read any of her books yet. But in preparation for her being a favorite author, I picked up this book, which contains her own anecdotal observations about various animals in combination with scientific information about said animals. I also bought the Ring of Brightwater trilogy by Gavin Maxwell. A couple years back on the internet, I caught wind of the Ring of Brightwater, which is all about the author's experiences living with 3 different otters, and I knew I had to have it. And then I found out that there were follow-ups, that it was actually a trilogy. And when I saw that there was this one collected volume, I knew I had to have it. This next book I picked up used, although you will see it is in pristine condition. That book is called The Dinosaur Artist, Obsession, Science, and the Global Quest for Fossils by Paige Williams. This book tells the story of how one man's obsession with collecting, preparing, and then selling specimens culminated in a 2012 auction of a T-Rex skeleton. But when that auction date came up, the Mongolian government stepped in, so I'm assuming something untoward was going on. This book seems to be in the vein of The Feather Thief, those types of books where people are doing something shifty in regards to natural history. Talk about niche. I also picked up Dry Storeroom Number 1, The Secret Life of the Natural History Museum by Richard Fortey. This is a behind-the-scenes look into the goings-on and the people behind the exhibits at the British Natural History Museum. I'm pretty sure it was Natalie, a curious reader, who first turned me on to this next book. That book is called The Mushroom at the End of the World, On the Possibility of Life in Capitalist Ruins by Anna Lobenhout-Singh. This is a tale of a rare mushroom that doubles as a discussion about what will remain in the ruins of our ruthless capitalist system. Another book I picked up because of Booktube is called Shark Drunk by Martin Stroxness. This is one that I saw Doris from Aldi Books show off when she was reorganizing her nonfiction shelves in preparation for Nonfiction November. This is the story of two friends who, for some reason, decide to pursue the infamous 1-ton Greenland shark using a tiny rubber boat. I could not resist this. I can't believe how long it took me to hear about this next one, but I absolutely had to pick it up when I did hear about it. That book is called The Salt Path by Rainer Wynn. This is a memoir about how the author and her terminally ill husband decided to walk the 630-mile-long Southwest Coast Path, which is England's longest footpath. I know Sarah from Hardcover Hearts recently read and really enjoyed this one. I am so excited to read this. The wonderful Stephanie over at That's What She Read was kind enough to get me this next book for my birthday. That book is called Working Stiff by Judy Melnick and TJ Mitchell. I think Stephanie and I were both very surprised that I hadn't yet read and didn't yet own this memoir of a medical examiner who started her training 2 months before the September 11th attacks. And now the final book in this nonfiction haul, I saved the best, aka the weirdest, for last. That book is called Lenins and Balmers by Ilya Sparsky and Samuel Hutchinson. In case you didn't know this, the body of former Soviet leader Lenin is still on display in Moscow. His body was mummified, and this is the story of how it was done. I doubt this will surprise you, but I've been really excited to read this book for a very long time. So those were all the nonfiction books that I've picked up recently. I would love to hear from you if you've read any of these books, if you've heard of any of these books, or if you're now interested in reading any of them now that you've seen them in this video. You can put that or any other comments or questions you may have down in the comment section below, or if you'd prefer to find me somewhere other than YouTube, I am on a variety of different places on social media, and the links to all of my profiles will be in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.